Hey, Alan, thanks for joining. How are things down under? I know
Oh,
you've been on a trip recently. Uh,
yeah, I've been up to Byron Bay in Queensland, so got out and got some sunshine and some surf and caught up with a few business owners, so which
yeah.
was fantastic. It's compared with where I am in southern Australia, in Adelaide, where it's
Mm.
not cold compared with Canada, but it's cold compared with Australia.
Yeah.
It was nice to get away and get back into shorts and t-shirts again.
Yeah, and you love your surfing, right?
I love my surfing. It's one of these things that I've always wanted to do, and took up 3.5 years ago as a
Oh, yeah.
stretch myself. And yeah, I had time on my hands because of what I've done with my business, and I just went, you know what, I've always wanted to learn surfing. Let's give it a go, and it is such a hard sport to learn.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, we won't go into my attempts at that. That's too embarrassing. We'll just stay with your story. Byron Bay, beautiful spot though. I just love, as you know, I used to live in Australia, so I traveled that coastline many times. It was just gorgeous. Yeah.
It's definitely a beautiful place in the world.
Hmm. But thanks for joining us. Let me, if you don't mind, let me do a quick introduction, a very quick one, because you and I just met a few weeks ago, and I've been fascinated with your journey and the things that you've done. A lot of business owners and even a lot of coaches, want to take business owners through what you've actually achieved. A lot of business owners would love to figure out, how do I get the business working actually without me, without losing it, without people, taking bits and pieces and running off in different directions or getting into all kinds of financial problems and so forth. That you've figured that magic out. And now you're on the other side of the fence, actually, as a coach, working with businesses, helping them do the same. So, I'd love to for us to get you to share a little bit of that story because it's just a really awesome story.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, and thanks for that brief introduction. And yeah, it's been great getting to know you over the last couple of weeks. In terms of, I guess, background of that background story, I came from being a consultant engineer, and back in 2005, my dad had a fire protection maintenance business here in Adelaide, and he wanted to retire from it, and he knew that I had the management experience to take it on, so he tapped me on the shoulder and said, can you come in? I want to semi-retire and still get paid. And can you do it? And it sounded like an ideal brain. In my brain, I went, oh, having the joy of owning your own business, the flexibility and the lifestyle of being a business owner. Yeah, I didn't know what I was getting into, did I?
Did
So
the
when I
surgery
when I
hurt? Did the surgery hurt?
yeah, the surgery really, really hurt. So I came into that business, and it was a typical small business. There was me, there was three technicians at the time, and an admin person. So there was five of us at the time, and the typical sort of thing. The technician has a problem, they phone me. The Margaret, my admin, had a problem, she phoned me. The customer had a problem, they phoned me. The supplier had a problem, they phoned me. And it was just 24 hours, 7 days a week, on the phone, on the emails, going out to see people, always on the go and always doing stuff and always busy and stressed, and missing out on time with my wife and time with my family. And the idea that dream I had in my head when I started of having this freedom wasn't there. uh, so you've seen that, no doubt, with a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of owners that you've worked with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And some of them struggle to just know how to let that go because, I think the other side of the coin is your dad seeing that opportunity to do that with you was pretty astute of him to also recognize that. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to think a little bit of it was he saw the genius in me and thought, oh, I can get out of this now and can take care of it. And I've got to give him full credit, because as a business owner, when you pass it on to another generation, most father-son, father-daughter, mother-daughter combinations, the parent doesn't want to let go. And he was fantastic, where he said, this is now yours. Keep me informed. As long as you keep me informed, it's yours to do with, as you want. And that's what I did. I was aware of business coaches, and we can talk about people being problem aware versus solution aware about business coaching a little bit later if you want to. But I was aware that there were coaches out there that could help you. So I reached out to a coach and got involved with what they were doing. And he got me to read 2 books that really changed my thinking. And these are classical books in the business world. So the E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, classic book. Every small business owner should really read. And The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Have I got that?
Yeah, Stephen Covey.
Did I get the surname right? Yeah. Those 2 books just kind of got me thinking about business completely differently. So at the end of reading those 2, I sat down and mapped out how I could take this business that was one group of people all grouped around me, to multiply that so that I actually controlled lots of little groups of people that were grouped around a single manager. And
you did a plan and a map?
What's plan that? And a map of, I know. And it really wasn't anything super pretty. It wasn't, a war and peace business plan. It really was what I needed to go, this is how it could look in the future. At that time, I called it my 2020 plan. 2020's been and gone. And roughly I got to past where that plan was a few years ago. So, but it was that idea of having a plan and then knowing what I needed to do, which was build the business as I went, but build the business with a purpose. So I knew where I wanted to get to. So when I went, I need to put somebody on, I looked for an opportunity to put somebody on that could fill a future role as well as the role I needed to at the time.
So how long was that journey, Alan?
Yeah, the whole journey took me 5 years to go from owner-centric to being free of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of it went kind of, you go going in this direction, and then you've made a mistake and you've got to go back a little bit, and then you keep going forward a little bit and back a bit. And that's because, working with a coach who he built successful businesses, but he hadn't perfectly built them the way that they could work without him 100%. So we were feeling out some of the stuff as we went.
Yeah, I don't know if you can confirm this, but, I always say to business owners, anyone starting a business, the first 3 years are the hardest, because you are doing this whole, try this, try that, try this. I think I know what I'm doing. And then you realize you're just hitting brick walls. Did you find the first 3 years is about right for you to really get all the bumps and bruises and things figured out that you needed to solve? Or
definitely, and it's understanding the business better and better. And once you understand the business, you understand the marketplace that you're working in and what your offering is, and stop trying to be everything for everybody. The biggest thing we did was really change our focus to go after just one part of the market. And that one part, as soon as we went after that one part of the market, our marketing changed for that. And all of a sudden we got business easier from that. That was good business. And the rest of it just came along for a ride. And we picked up business in other areas that we weren't aiming for, just out of, purely gaining momentum. So
that's another
those first few years are hard.
That's another interesting point. You probably see that with some of the businesses you're working with now. And again, the experience I've had is, asking someone to pick a niche that they want to focus on is like asking them to cut their left and right arms off. It's kind of, well, what do you mean? I'm good for all of these areas, right? Or, what's your real vision of where you want to be in 5 years' time? Those were things that people just have to really bump through that. You know, is that your
Yeah.
story as well? Yeah.
Yeah, that's my story and my story with my clients. I tell a lot of my clients when we're looking at who is, who to niche down to is consider it a little bit like dating. You don't have to marry that niche. You just date it for an extended period of time. And if it doesn't work, you can change your niche and go to a parallel niche and dive down into that. Because like you're saying, that first 3 years, what you think you're going to be doing versus what you end up doing can be two completely different things. And you've got to do that trial and error before you get it right.
Yeah.
And we did that with staff when we were building. We originally went with the idea of, hiring well-trained staff from the industry. And what we found was the way that we did work in our industry was different to everybody else. And we'd hire someone from the industry and they would clash with us. And we've now evolved that basically we put in everybody and train them from other industries, usually customer service-based industries, and train them to do the sub-trade inspection and testing that we need them to do. And that is a much better model. And I end up with staff in the fire business lasting for, 10, 15 years with us, rather than having this conflict with somebody who wants to do it differently to how we do it.
Again, very interesting, because what I'm reading between the lines is you managed to get someone who's had the cultural behavioral stuff related to customer service, as opposed to the skill of your product, which you can teach. But the other stuff, it's gold mine to find that. Is that
exactly 100%? Yeah. Yep. Yeah, you're exactly right. And you've got more experience with what you do on this, on how important the right cultural fit for somebody is. And if you get the right person with the right cultural fit, their skills you can teach. And if they've got a desire to learn those skills, and that's where the magic really happens.
Yeah. The old capability times conviction. You can, if someone's capable, you can teach them. But if they don't have the passion and the conviction to really love what they do and get up in the morning excited about that, you're just not going to get that 80, 100%, or even 120% out of their excitement about what they're doing, right?
Exactly. Once you've got their commitment, they're yours, until I've got people that have left me and come back. I've got people, that a lot of my staff have been with us for 10, 12 years. And,
Nice.
Anybody who doesn't do 10 years really feels like we haven't had them, we haven't served them as well as we could have. So, which is good to be stable as well. So rather than having a churn of staff.
So I'm sorry, I digress a little bit, because of the behavior intelligence stuff that we do. The question that comes to mind is, when someone is in a role for 10 years, to me, is that become a question of they actually, what we call, they have a long clock, so they're actually happy to stay in the same role, doing pretty much the same thing day in, day out. And it's kind of like accountants and bookkeepers. They could do that for 40 years and be very happy doing that. Whereas you take an entrepreneur and they want to change everything every 12 months, if not sooner, right? So did that play into your selection process, or do you have a growth plan for people to keep them engaged and motivated?
Yeah, most of the people are exactly what you talked about there. They're the accountant sort of stuff. A lot of what we do is compliance based. So it's exactly that, with that accountant sort of mentality of, I do the right job, I follow the procedure, and I make sure it's right all the time, every time. And they're keen to do the job and do the job really well. And they do have this small kind of increment of how they can go up to be a senior in that team, and then how they can go up eventually to be one of the team leaders. But there's not this huge growth progesterone, but they don't really want it. What we're finding is they're really happy with the job because the job is really flexible. You know, for most of them, they just love the fact that they're on their own. They don't have someone looking over their shoulder because they go from business to business to business. They have nobody looking at when they clock on and clock off. They just get this set of work to do for the month and they go off and do it. And nobody looks over their shoulder to say, it's 8 o'clock. You're not at your first job yet. It's like, have you done all your work? Yep. Cool.
Yeah.
So there's a reward that goes along with it, a flexibility.
Yeah, you know, again, back to that mindset and the way the brain is programmed. They have a high need for security and certainty, as opposed to, you know, entrepreneurs. Again, if I can just use them as the example, they hate some of that stuff. They're always looking for the challenge and they're taking the risks and constantly, you know, pushing in new areas all the time. So it's you know, we've noticed that through neuroscience and understanding how the brain works, you know, and so forth. You can almost put an MRI on the two people and you can see the different parts of the brain actually lighting up as they think about their work and their opportunities. So
yeah, and that's definitely a part of the conflict between me and everybody else in the organization is I'm that entrepreneur at heart, and you know the saying is don't give Alan too much time to think because he'll come up with a new innovation. And so, you know, Alan with 2 weeks off is a bad idea. Everybody is like, let's keep Alan busy. Let's give him other things to focus on so that he stays away from coming back into the business and coming up with new ideas. So, so there's definitely that difference between me and them. So 100%.
Yeah, it's the engineer and entrepreneur in one, right? You want to fix everything.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. Always. Yeah. We're similar. We're similar like that. We see an opportunity and go, all right, how can I get in and fix it? And you know, and that's where I've always been with the business is what can we do to make it better? And I think that's served me well is, you know, how can I hire the right people, train the right people to do what, you know, the coaching at the start taught me to, which is make myself redundant from the business.
Right.
And I always look at that, you know, how can we install software to make people make things work more efficiently and to remove the dedication and requirement for making, you know, one person a balance point or a choke point in your business. So I've always kind of looked for that. What's the next solution to the next problem? How can I evolve what I'm doing? Becomes something I'm always looking for in anything that I do, which is that engineer and entrepreneur of how can I do it better, cheaper, faster, quicker.
I guess they're really happy that you've taken on this new journey of being a coach and you know, focusing your attention on other businesses.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think taking off when we went down that rabbit hole, which you and I are always good at doing, is I continued to build the business to the point where I effectively now, you know, after 5 years, I'd made myself completely redundant. And I really did the first test of that. I don't know if I've told you this story, but the first test of that was to actually go four-wheel driving through the central part of Australia. And you've been to Australia, you know what the central part of Australia is like. It's really isolated. You know, for 5 weeks, I lived with my son and a few other people. We lived out the back of our four-wheel drives. We had to be completely self-sufficient, and there was no mobile phone reception or anything. So if you wanted me, you had to phone us on the satellite phone, and therefore nobody phoned me because I was gone for 5 weeks, and it was $1 a minute if you wanted to talk to me. So it had to be important.
That's right.
It was the real test for me as to whether or not I'd built what I wanted to build, because I came back for that and I I got in early thinking that the place had blown up and the world was going to be destroyed. And, I'm sitting at my desk and I'm kind of going through my emails from the newest to the oldest. And everybody, when they've dealt with an email, they kind of CC'd me into being dealt with it. So I could delete the new one that said they dealt with it and delete the old one. And within an hour or two, I'd literally gone through 5 weeks worth of emails because I was just deleting emails, just going, that one's been dealt with, delete the 2 others that came along with it. That one's been dealt with, delete the other ones. And, my fear as I came back was that the business was destroyed and, I was picking up the pieces and having to start from scratch. Mm-hmm. The reality was it works better without me. Mm-hmm. It really does often work better without me. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I've therefore had to evolve my thinking to that of a real chairman. So I use the term eyes on, hands off. Mm-hmm. So I have my eyes on the business in terms of the numbers and KPIs. And as long as they stay within boundaries I set, I keep my hands off the business. Mm-hmm. And I just coach the people in terms of how to work better in the business. And the rest of the time, my hands are off, my eyes are on, and I let them go for it. And it's freed me up to explore new ideas and new things. And, business coaching, I'd been doing as a side hustle for the last 8 years. And last year I went, you know what? I'm getting a bit bored learning how to surf. I think I need to fill my life with something else. And helping business owners get that freedom that I've got. Mm-hmm. And I'd seen other people who hadn't worked out how to get that freedom. Right. And I'd seen them, start first, finish last, do work at evenings, do work on weekends, not go to family functions, not spend time with their wife, not have a relationship with their kids, and thinking they're doing the right thing, providing for their family, but they're providing money. They're not providing a father or a husband in their family, and therefore they're only providing half of themselves. And I saw it in one particular friend where that resulted in divorce. And to me now, if I can stop that divorce from happening by getting in there, helping the business owner understand that they've got this other part of the life that really is more important than their business, and how to balance the two of them. If I can stop 1 or 2 divorces from ever happening, I've done. My coaching has been well worthwhile, and I'm a happy man. So it's really about passion, about giving back and helping people get what I've got.
And you've started global business coaching, right? And are growing that. And before we dive into that a little bit, the things that you are comfortable to be, as you said, eyes on, hands off. I wonder just how many people are uncomfortable with the concept of, oh, they don't need me anymore. What am I going to do with myself? Right? They haven't planned past that point.
Yeah. You've got to. It's a real mindset change, and it's a real ego change from going, we all get this buzz of this ego and that I'm the most important person in my business. Mm-hmm. And that means that everybody's got to come through me. And if everything comes through me, then I've got my self-worth. Mm-hmm. Where, for me, I'm still the most important person in that fire business, because I'm still the person with the vision and the ideas and the person that can get in and fix anything in the business. But just because I can doesn't mean I have to. And so for me, and this is what I work with my clients about, is the idea that you have to work the hardest isn't actually the right way. You have to work the smartest. And sometimes that means getting out of your own way or getting out of the way of your team. And if you can make that transition from being central to everything to actually being the chairman, and it's a bit like, to me, it's often from being a small business owner to being a chairman of a board. And that's the pathway that you have to go. If you think of a chairman of the board, which is what I think of myself in that fire business as, the chairman of a board, the chairman of one of the big companies, whether it's Microsoft or Apple, The chairman doesn't go and start selling phones. The chairman doesn't start going and doing programming. The chairman looks at the overview picture and makes sure that the whole business is online with that. So it's an evolution of where you need to move to. So it's super hard evolution to make, and requires a lot of work on yourself as well, in terms of, you know, your own thinking about your self-worth, how you get your self-worth, and what's important to you, and really understanding what's actually important to you. So a big transition to make, and a constant struggle, because you'd be the same as me. Give us a problem, we'll get in there and muck in and do it. To stand back and watch somebody muddle through it and not solve the problem as quickly or as well as we could is really, really hard. But it's a discipline of going, that's not my job. My job is bigger than that.
Right. Yeah. Now, did you put a general manager in place, or are you still wearing that?
No, I've got an operations manager in place who takes care of most of the operational issues, and then we catch up for an hour once a week, and as we call it, he either informs me of stuff just in case things come up in the future, or he brings solutions to me with his recommendations and asks me to make what we call a captain's call, which is the decision that the business owner really needs to make that he can't make as in that operational role. So, and that was the final, missing loop, was finding that right person to take on that role. And, the first person I had to do it didn't really do it the way that I needed them to do it. And I had to evolve the whole business from that person I had in mind didn't do it, and I had to find another person from within the organization that could do it. So it's interesting. Like I said, it's step forward, you make a mistake, you have to go backwards before you can go forwards again. And you just got to go with that, don't you?
Yeah. A lot of people get too hung up on the decisions they've made and the commitments that they've put in place, and the world's constantly changing, man. How can you fix something for the old days of doing a 25-year plan or a 10-year plan? Some people today can't do a 90-day plan because things are changing so quickly. 90 days, so much can change, so much can happen.
Yeah, and so quickly, and I think last year really proved that to us of, literally between the beginning of March and the end of March, the world completely changed in a way that we couldn't even have imagined, with COVID. If you'd have said that to anybody, all international travel would be grounded, and, there'd be large quantities of us that would be quarantined in our houses, we would have told you were full of it. You had no idea what you were talking. You were smoking too much illegal drugs or whatever. But in reality, that's what happened, and we all had to adapt to it.
Yeah. And that's another rabbit, Warren. I'm not going to go there.
Definitely.
But look, I was just looking at the time, and it's gone so quickly. You and I just more to talk about. I'd love for us to get back together on another one soon. But before we wrap up, mate, just wanted to maybe summarize into some key takeaway points that people can go, right, this is kind of what we covered, so, some of the things that I recall, and you can jump in, is you got to get out of your own way. You got to recognize that the business can sometimes run so much better if you allow people the freedom to do that.
Correct.
Secondly, get the right people into the role. Don't necessarily hire for skill, but get the right attitude. And we talked about procedural people for certain roles. Maybe there's a requirement for creative people if you're looking to really expand internationally and things like that, but decide on the type of person that you want in there. And then I love your quote, you know, eyes off, hands off. Eyes on,
Yep.
yeah.
Oh, hands off. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of the fundamental things. I think the only thing they're missing is that idea of having thought about what you want the business to do for you. You know, we often develop a business plan of how we want to take the business, and it's all about the business. And we never stop. I always like to teach my clients, let's start with you. What do you want to do? What are the boundaries you want in place? How do you want your life to look? And therefore, what does the business need to do to serve you? Rather than everybody goes, this is the business plan and I'm down here and I'm a slave to it. If we can change that thinking, and that's what I did early on, was what do I want the business to do for me? And therefore, how does that mean the business looks in the future?
Okay. Yeah, I must wish the clarity on that, and thanks for covering that, because that also answers that other question that, you know, business owners don't know what they're going to do once the business is successful. But I think you've answered it, is if you think in terms of what outcome you want to have for yourself, it goes beyond the business being finished. It goes, lets you think past that point, right?
Exactly. Yeah. 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 And because, you know, we're not here on the earth to serve our businesses. We're here on the earth to add to the community. And we've got to be looking at what does that mean for us? And is that community our family, or is it the wider community where we can serve in other roles in it? So yeah, the real hard thing to think through, but that's where you got to start. What do I want to be known for? And, you know, in the E-Myth, Michael Gerber does that exercise where, you know, he looks at how would you like people to talk about you at your funeral? And that's a great exercise to go through, of understanding what they might say now and what you want them to say. And then that's what you need to build your business and your life around, what you want them to say for you.
Awesome. Alan,
awesome,
thank you so much. Alan Short at Global Business Coaching.
globalbusinesscoaching.com.au. Yep. Or just search for Global Business Coaching on Facebook is probably the best place to find us.
Awesome. Well done.
Excellent.
Congratulations.
No worries.
And thanks. And let's do this again. There's so much more I want to talk about, you know, your coaching journey now. You know, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah. That'd be excellent, mate.
All right, buddy.
No worries.
See you.
All right. Catch ya. Bye.